I call the regular council meeting of the Village of Oxford to order on Tuesday, February 12th at 6:32 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, could you do a roll call, please?
Bailey.
Here.
Frost.
Here.
Helmut.
Yes.
Logan.
Here.
Kemp. Here.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda for our February 12th meeting. I'll entertain a motion to accept.
If there's no changes, to make a motion to approve the regular agenda for February 12th, 2019.
Support? There's a motion with support to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Presentations, seeing none. Public hearings, seeing none. At this time, we do have a call to the public on public comment. So if you do have public comment, we invite you to come to the podium and state your name, where you live, and what you'd like to talk to us about. Yeah. And I will say that during public comment, council will not respond, but we will take notes, and we will have our staff follow up with residents as needed.
Okay, Kelly Arkles, 491 Thornhill Trail. I'm part of the Oxford Lake subdivision, and we're here today, me and two other people in our subdivision, because we just want to more of an introduction with the M24 construction happening, and I know our community, tons of communities are worried about it. We have some very specific concerns for our subdivision, and not only that, we also have concerns for current traffic pre and post construction. So we're forming a committee in the subdivision, and we have nothing that we want to present to you today. We just want to introduce ourselves, let you guys know that we're working on some ideas. We want to get involved. We want to get your feedback, and then we also want to make sure that for certain things that we could ask for support and guidance. So that's really what I'm here for. The second thing that I wanted to find out is I had found out from Chief Solwald at a OLA meeting that there's a monthly MDOT meeting with everyone. And I was not really. All right, so I was wondering if there's any discussion about possibly having residents from across the village involved, and not just from our subdivision, but I know Glassby is going to be tremendously affected, the downtown, and that way we can give some of our ideas as well.
Sure, yeah, that's not a monthly meeting, but we can follow up with you and let you know when those meetings will take place. Okay. If you could do the same, please let Joe Medor know when these committee meetings are for your association, and we'll be happy to maybe even send somebody to attend those meetings to help guide you.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Council. I am Jeff Winter, 448 Sunset Boulevard, part of the committee set up with Oxford Lakes. What she didn't tell you is what we're planning on, what we're looking at. We're looking at different options to handle the traffic coming and going from our subdivision. One of them is our gate out front. Another one, we're doing a survey of our subdivision, of all the residents, as many as we can get to participate, to find out if the gate is actually something people want. And if they do, then that's some of the direction we're going to be asking you guys for guidance on what it is we need to do to make that operational. Or if that's not the best solution, what can we do to minimize the traffic going through our subdivision? So that's all.
Thank you.
That's been an issue in the past with that subdivision decades ago.
Good evening, Brian Cloutier, Director of Oxford Public Library. I just wanted to let council know that our exhibit, the mural exhibit at the library for the WPA murals, has been an overwhelming success. We had about 250 individuals for our opening reception on January 11th, and since then, we've welcomed nearly 8,000 guests through our doors. So it's been very popular and very well received, and we're very happy that the community has supported the arts in this way and supported the history of our community. So on behalf of the museum, and because I am also the president of the Historical Society Museum, on behalf of the museum and the library, thank you to everybody for your support. And if you haven't seen the murals yet, we have them through the end of the month. And they're in the main lobby of the library, so please come and see them. They're amazing. They're the original 1938 WPA era murals. So, and they were painted by a local artist back then, so please come and see.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, public comment going one more time. Seeing none, we will move on to our consent agenda.
Mr. President, the one item I had set out for everyone that was just a memo, that was just a correspondence.
Okay.
That would be part of your consent agenda. Some of the information that was asked for at last month's meeting, it wasn't able to be sent
In the
out
packet.
previously. So this is what this memo was that was out in front of you. It was
Okay.
just a correspondence. It's not on for any action tonight.
Okay. Thank you. What's the council's pleasure?
If there's no questions, I'll make a motion to receive and file correspondence items 1A, 1 and 2.
There's, oh, sorry.
I'll support that.
There's a motion with support to receive and file correspondence and letters, consent agenda items 1 and 2. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Moving on to consent agenda items B.
If there's no questions, I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda items B, including the bills, the amount of $153,591.61.
Support.
There's a motion with support to approve consent agenda items B, including the bills. Roll call vote, please.
Frost.
Yes.
Helmut.
Yes.
Logan.
Yes.
Kemp. Yes. Bailey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries. Moving on to unfinished and old business. Beautification Commission appointments. Mr. Madore?
Yes, we do have one person whose term expired at the end of the year, and there was a vacancy when Mr. Bullen retired sometime last summer and fall there. We had one applicant, Michelle Klein, who recently was appointed to the DDA, but I did follow up with her when she was in the office one day paying her water bill perhaps, and she said she still, even though she's on a DDA, would be interested in doing the Beautification Commission as well.
Okay.
So she'd be happy to do so.
All right. Well, if there's no further discussion, I move to appoint Ms. Kathy Hummel and Ms. Michelle Klein to the Beautification Commission for a 3-year term.
Support?
There's a motion with support for these appointments. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Moving on to Planning Commission appointment. Mr. Madore, would you just give a quick update for our new folks?
Okay. We had a gentleman on the planning commission, Mr. Deeg, who's a Oxford Lakes resident, whose term expired at the end of 17, and at that time, he requested to be replaced, if possible. There weren't anyone able to do it. And according to the Planning and Enabling Act, Michigan, he then stays on until his replacement is named. And so that's kind of where he's been kind of limbo. He still has shown up to some of the meetings in 2017, even though he's technically was expired, but again, he was allowed to stay because of the statute. So his is one of the terms that is out there and does need to be dealt with.
Okay. Thank you. And there's one interested applicant, Ms. Kelsey Cook. Kelsey, you're here this evening. Would you like to say a few words? I understand you spoke with the Planning Commission Chair.
Yes, good evening. Kelsey Cook at 50 West Burdick. I am interested in serving on the Planning Commission. I did speak to Gary Douglas. I attended last week's Planning Commission meeting, and I'm very interested. I've reviewed the master plan and a lot of the zoning ordinance, and was able to hear what the Planning Commission had in store for what their ideas were for 2019. So I think they're all great. I'm very interested. So if the council agrees, I would be happy to be appointed and serve Oxford in that capacity.
Wonderful. Thank you. Ms. Helmuth?
The planning commission did overwhelmingly make the recommendation for Kelly to be on the planning commission.
Kelsey?
Or Kelsey, I'm sorry. But I just want to say, the person she's replacing, Gary Deeg, was a real trooper about, his work was killing him, and he made every effort to get to every planning
Absolutely.
commission he could, and his term was way up, and it was killing him. And I just want to make sure everybody knows he did a really great job for us, as I'm sure you will. You better.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, at this time, I move to appoint Mrs. Kelsey Cook to the Planning Commission for a one-year term. And the reason for the one-year term is to make sure that those terms are staggered. We can reappoint you in the near future.
I'll support.
There's a motion with support to appoint Kelsey Cook to the Planning Commission. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Kelsey. Welcome aboard. All right, Mr. Bailey?
I've commented about the master plan. You got this map of the village, and I found it was very confusing when I was new on the village government. There's 3 maps. There's the planning map, there's the zoning map, and there's the land use map. And if I have all 3 in front of me, then I don't get confused. Otherwise, I get confused real fast, because they all look similar.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Moving on to our snow ordinance amendment first reading. Mr. Davis?
Based on the comments we received at the last meeting, I worked with village administration to restructure the ordinance. Important note at the beginning is we did define what would be a snow season as October 1st through March 31st. Subject to the current climate, that seemed to cover our needs. We then restructured the penalties as indicated, first offense, second and third offense, 25, 50, and 75. What this council thought was a better approach. The remaining portion stayed pretty much the same. The reason we had the snow season so that we didn't cross over from one year to the next in the middle, and then people would think you get a first warning in December, then you think your next warning is in January, still your first warning because it's a new year. So we created a season. And, but I think it's ready for your first reading.
Thank you.
Do we need to schedule a public hearing?
We do.
Yes. You could move to accept the first reading and set the matter for a public hearing.
I need a calendar.
Can we make comment on that before?
Absolutely.
Ms. Slogan?
Just one concern, because I know that originally we discussed incorporating a warning, and that did not make it into the new revision. However, if I can just get some clarification on one warning per snow season. Yeah, okay, so it did make the cut. That's good. However, can I get some clarification on how they're going to issue the warning? Because when I'm looking at the code enforcement activity report, it says that like there's a couple of residents here that received warning. Others were just advised to keep observation. So I want to, be clear moving forward that we have an actual system in place for how we're actually going to be issuing the warnings, and that way there doesn't look like there's any kind of disparity.
They have sometimes used like the red door hangers like we use for water shutoffs. There are multiple use door hangers. If somebody's home and he can see them wherever, he perhaps will talk to them in person. But if not, he'll hang a red door hanger on that, and we'll just have to keep track of it in the office where we have had those warnings. And those would stick out, hopefully catch their attention if they're going throughout the day and then they come home and see it.
Right, I just want to make sure that if a resident is issued a warning, they can't argue, or they're going to be aware. They want to make sure that they are aware that they've been issued a warning, and therefore subject to the next step, which would be a fine.
Are letters typically sent with the warning?
Well, this part is kind of new for us. He will send letters, if he sees a violation of a vehicle parked somewhere, or whatnot, he will typically send a letter out. And you get like a 10-day notice of correction or something like that, depending on what the the violation is and how soon it has to be remedied. This here, a door hanger could be simple enough because he happens to be right there. We could possibly follow up with a letter too.
Okay.
But we want to make sure they get it, for starters. And then we also want the neighbors to understand, well, they didn't shovel theirs, and how come they didn't get a fine? Well, then we would have to explain to them, well, that was their first warning and stuff like that.
Right, okay. So there's a mechanism already in place to
Yeah,
issue
we're
those?
discussing it again today. He's gonna have to track it, he'll track it like he does his other stuff with a spreadsheet in the system, and the BSNA system will create some letters that he can automatically send out.
Okay.
too. So we could make it to where the letters will go out, but he can do the red door hangers also, because I think those will catch the riot maybe that day when they come home. But we could always make sure and do a letter as well if that's a preference.
I think having it in writing is always good for,
We could do
right,
both.
so that it's documented on our behalf too, or on our end, so.
Yeah.
Any
It'll
other-
be documented both ways, but yeah, if you want a dual approach, because I mean, maybe we hang it on the front door, they come around the garage, go in the side door, maybe they don't see the door hanger, but
Correct.
they'll see it in the mail in a day or two.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Kemp?
I saw working today was, I know that I work at the Ox, they, the sidewalk was shoveled, whatnot. As soon as the snowplow came through, it
Right.
threw everything back onto the sidewalk. Obviously, someone went and took care of that, but if they come through, the ordinance officer comes through and that all that's from the snowplow is on the sidewalk, is that gonna be a fine?
This talks to naturally falling snow.
Yeah,
That's what this talks about. Of course, we want those folks to get back out and do that, but this really doesn't address that.
Right.
This is natural accumulation.
Right, and I would encourage folks that if there is any question, it takes 2 seconds to take a quick photo, just to, do your due diligence, snap a shot, it's got the timestamp, the date, and if it ever comes up in question, that, it's there. So, just a best practice recommendation, so.
Can we comment on this stuff, or is there another opportunity for that?
You can, sure. Do you have comment? Sure, come to the podium.
So I've heard about this ordinance.
Sure.
Who hasn't?
Well, and this is the second version of it. So we passed one in September after a lengthy period, and that was met with resistance. And so this is the version that has been drafted since December, which lessens the fines.
Gives more
and-
time.
And expands the time.
I like the warning option too, because that wasn't there before.
Right.
I haven't been fined. I'm usually stay on top of my stuff. But are there parameters for, is it, if there's a dusting, what is the guidelines for infraction, right?
Right. This does not define an accumulation total. It just says naturally falling snow or ice, which ceases to fall or accumulate, such snow or ice shall be removed from the sidewalks. And some of the reasoning behind that is that, a eighth of an inch or a quarter inch of ice with an inch of snow is equally as dangerous, especially to some of our residents who are less mobile than others, and school children going to school, et cetera. So we would prefer to see that the sidewalks are clear with any accumulation.
And how much time do you have? And,
Right.
is this on the person doing the driving around looking for?
Right, so.
You have till 7 o'clock the next day, 7 PM the next day.
Okay, after you receive,
No, after there's an accumulation, you have till 7 PM the next day
okay.
just to clear your walks.
Which should be ample
Which
time.
the council thought was a reasonable time.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of those people that do shift work and stuff that,
That's why we changed it to 7 o'clock the next day. Not only is it another day, but it gives people time to get home.
okay. All right.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Again, we're looking for a motion to accept the first reading and have a formal public hearing, which we would open up the floor specifically on this topic and have comment from residents.
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of the amendment to the Village of Oxford Snow and Ice Removal Ordinance and to schedule the public hearing on March 12th at 7 PM or soon thereafter.
I'll support. And I have a comment. First reading is a technical term. It doesn't mean that I've read every word of this yet. I will read every word of this yet, but technically this is the first reading.
That's okay, I'd like to amend that because our meetings start at 6:30 now, not 7. So it's 6:30 PM or soon thereafter.
Yeah.
Planning Commission 7, I get confused.
Thank you both. So there is a motion with support to accept the first reading and move on to a public hearing on March 12th. We need roll call for that? No?
Yes.
Yep. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Humble?
Yes.
Logan?
Yes.
Kemp?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Frost?
Yes. Moving on to our next item, event expenses and repayments.
I placed a 3-page memo on your desk today. I apologize for not getting to you sooner. Some of it is the same information that was in our packet last month. The first page is the minutes from April 10th, 2018, when we first adopted the new special event application. So that is kind of old news as well, but it gives you a nice way. And then second page is section 6.19 of the charter, which talks about community promotion activities and what the council is authorized to expend. So again, I know that was in our packet. All three of these items had been in our packet at one time or another, but I know some of them haven't seen it, so I want to make sure we get it all right back in front of everybody. Like Allison knows it's brand new, so I want to make sure you get it. So it talks about on the minutes how and when the new application was put in place, and then the final motion was to adopt the policy and procedure and application for implementation and set aside the cost recovery contemplation until January 1, 2019. It didn't mean that the cost recovery automatically goes into place. It was
Right.
just at January 1 of this year, we were going to start taking up the issue again.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Just clarification again, if I may.
Ms. Logan?
So this fund is to include appreciation dinners, parades, senior citizen programs, municipal celebrations and parades, award banquets, and other miscellaneous dinners,
Right.
which are a benefit to the village but may not expressly serve a municipal purpose.
So this, from my understanding, and please correct me, Mr. Davis or Mr. Madore, this comes from our charter and gives us the legal authority to utilize this amount of funds. These funds have not been budgeted for. There may or may not be any intention to budget those funds in the near future, but this serves to notify council and give us the understanding that we do have legal authorization to spend money on those said activities. So at this point, we want to determine whether or not we want to use municipal funds towards events that take place in the community, whether those be parades or festivals, et cetera, which is the next spreadsheet, which has a breakdown of, most of this is related to staff time, has a breakdown of DPW and police staff time for the two events that are given, and you can see the totals there. This came up in the previous council last year, the idea of cost recovery, and obviously it was set aside, and we continue to sort of set this aside. So we're looking for direction to give staff here on where to go.
I think if anybody reads the minutes, they'll notice I voted no. Because I think we're a community. I don't have a problem with the village paying for these things. I think the $7,000, we are not blowing our budget when we're allowed to spend up to $30,000. And I think a lot of these things are essential if we're going to be a community.
I agree. I
Ms.
think,
Logan?
so I mean, if we were just to pull this fund and decide that we're not going to spend this on celebrations, the optics of that would be pretty poor. However, I think considering the verbiage of the way that this ordinance is right now, what you're telling me is we're taking money out of a potential senior citizen program and putting it towards the cost of security at one festival downtown.
No, hold on just 1 second. So we have the authority to spend that money, but we have not budgeted any dollars for any of those purposes.
But we could.
But we could, yes.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty substantial amount of money to spend on security. I think if it's an event that is hosted not by one of our own entities, whether that be the village or the DDA, they should bring their own insurance, right? And have to cover the cost of security and personnel. I think that's fair.
Thank you, Ms. Logan. Mr. Davis?
I think we developed an application that we worked, I don't know if everyone has seen the application, that folks have to fill out if they want to have an event, and they addresses insurance, and they have to show that they sat down with our illustrious police chief and fire chief, and go ahead and put that in the paper, CJ, the illustrious word. That they've met with all the right people, and if they're going to have, if they have traffic concerns, they have to have those worked out. If they're going to have a tent, there was some requirements, and you guys should take a look at the application.
I'll share that. I'll email that out. We just got one in this week, as a matter of
Because
fact.
that's real important to this process.
Right.
So somebody wants to have an event, they fill out the application, they do all the meetings, and then what this was covering was the costs of the various departments related to that event can be recovered by the village. And I think what Mo was saying is that when that issue, she didn't have any problem with the application process, but I think Mo voted against having a cost recovery component. Correct, Mo?
Yeah, I think if we're gonna have a parade, we're gonna need the police department there.
Right.
And not just for the parade, but for the community, so that the
Right.
parade doesn't go wackadoodle and all of a sudden there's floats going willy-nilly down all the side streets.
Right.
The police wanna be there for a parade.
Right.
And I just think it's part of our job to supply police for a parade.
But I think there was some differentiation here too, in that not every event would be a community event, that people could have events that still needed municipal support of a sort.
Right.
And we were trying to make sure that those were addressed as well.
Right, and I think that's the clear distinction that maybe even Ms. Logan is asking, maybe, that, like, the chamber parade seems like a very different entity than, say, the Tough Mudder, and I'm just throwing that out as an example. And so one is a for-profit entity, one is a community-based entity. So are we able to draw a distinction between those two in our cost recovery efforts?
Yes.
Okay.
And in the past, Tough Mudder, for any, they have refunded or recovered from cost to the police department.
And that was just the first thing that
Yep,
came to
I know,
mind.
but
so,
that's a good
no.
example, though.
No, it's a
because,
great
again,
example.
That's an out-of-town place that's coming on a for-profit venture, who then did pay the township and our police officers as well for the time that they, and the money that they put out, so. The Christmas parade, look at the total parade for the village was like $839. Now, the Christmas parade was put on solely by the chamber this year, and from what I'm told, it wasn't that many years ago, it was the chamber, it was the township parks, it was the village, and the DDA kind of all pitched in and around the edges, and it was more of a, maybe even the volunteerism as well as some of the costs were shared by 3 or 4 different entities. It all fell back to them, and they would like to see some help from the other entities, whether it's in the insurance coverage or police coverage or something like that. I just know that's in their mind.
And each one of these will come back to you by way of the application process and the cost recovery. It's nothing's automatic here. Each one will be reviewed by council individually. But you want to have these mechanisms in place so you can make your decisions based on all the tools in front of you.
The dollar amounts that I put on that page, that's a maximum allowed. That was just to let everyone know where you're at. Thursday, I know we hadn't budgeted any of that. You can see what was absorbed in this past calendar year for those other events. It was just absorbed by way, because this policy hadn't changed. But that was just there for illustration purposes more than anything, I guess. To let you know what the millage, the quarter mill would be.
Okay.
Is,
Ms. Kemp?
sorry, so is the village absorbing those?
Yes.
Like the police costs, or is the police department?
Well, they are the village. So
Okay,
yes,
so sorry.
they're funded by the village, the DPW is funded by the village. So all of those labor costs you see on there were absorbed through our budget last year without any recovery of those funds. And so that just gives an idea of what the cost was for those events. And, it's up to you guys to decide how you want to tackle them going forward. The first one that will come our way would be the Memorial Day Parade. We didn't have the special event new application process in place in time for the Memorial Day Parade last year. It calls for a 60-day window to get it to us so we can start reviewing it, getting it to the other chiefs and stuff to review it and then bring to council. It was so close to their event last year, we didn't run them through that process. Theirs is an even smaller event, of course, than this. So that's going to be the first one that would be a community-type event, probably coming down the pike to us. The other one I have just received from Firmly Rooted Church for the small event they want to do in Centennial Park is all contained in the park. It really won't have any cost to us per se. But it still will come to you for approval.
Okay, thank you. What's council's pleasure on this?
I guess since I haven't yet walked through the application process and the approval
And we don't need
of
any
any of these.
answer tonight. This was just, it was on, last month it was on our agenda, but we had a long meeting.
We did.
You had some information, we wanted to circle back around, get you a little bit more information. You guys need to have this discussion going
You
forward.
can move to set, you can.
I would prefer to just postpone, any kind of action on it, just because I want to be really clear that, one, I love celebrations, a parade is great. However, I want to be very clear, if we're going to be supplying people, resources, and funding to these events, in essence, that's an endorsement. And if we're going to be making those decisions on behalf of the taxpayers, I want to make sure that that's in their best interest and something that they would be consenting to. So that's why I just wanted to clarify that.
I'll send out an example of the application right away to the council members who have, everybody, and if you've seen it before, it'll be just an email anyways.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Was that a motion, Ms. Logan?
I think it was.
To set aside or?
Yes.
And I will support that.
There's a motion to set aside with support. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Moving on to request for facility use for the robotics team. Chief Sowell?
Good evening, everyone. I just want to comment real fast before we get to the permission for the garage. We do meet monthly. They are leadership meetings, they're not necessarily NDOT meetings. So if there is any information that does come out of that, then I'll definitely let you guys know at your association meetings. Therefore, transfer anything to Manager Medor for future, maybe meetings that he can come to as well. Okay. The use of the garage, the Oxford Schools Robotics Teams has requested an extension to use our garage until the month of April. Representatives from the team on attending the next council meeting. I thought there was going to be somebody here for that. Is there anybody here from the school that would like to speak on that? No, they must not have made it because of the bad weather. So right now they have equipment in our garage, and they're asking for an extension because they are doing some more work and entering into some playoff forms of whatever they're doing with the robotics team. Since their equipment's already in the garage, they're utilizing that. They're out of our way. It's worked out pretty well. I'm in agreement with it. If it pleases the council, if we can let these guys just extend this through April so they can finish off whatever training and building that they have going on with the robotics team. And with that said, we have kind of a gem out there of a garage, and I know we have plans on redoing this parking lot and tearing that garage down. But essentially, I really hope that I can talk you guys out of that maybe one day before that happens, because we have a great asset there that this community uses, not just us, but the schools, the DDA, the Pollyant Trail, floats that we store in there for parades and events that we have downtown. And for the cost of us putting up carports and sheds to put all our equipment in, I think we could patch some holes and put some paint on it, and maybe do some roofing. I don't know. We have to get figures together, but I think that's just my 2 cents on the garage, and I just think it's a great asset, especially for our cars that we park in there with all this equipment, computers, radars, laptop computers in our cars. Keeping them out of the elements is just a huge asset for us. Or even if we have to do a repair, we can pull into the garage and we're out of the elements and we're in a warm atmosphere. There is a bathroom in there. We can utilize it for training. Also, it's used for can drives for the Lions Club, so they use it for charity as well. So it's a huge asset and a great entity for this community if we can try to somehow salvage that at a cost that we can try to work out in the future. But again, back to asking for permission for the robotics team to utilize the garage. That's what I'm asking for today, if it pleases the council.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
If no one has any questions, I'll make a motion to approve the use of the garage by the robotics team through the end of April.
Support? There's a motion with support to extend the robotics team's use of the garage. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Moving on to new business, the Rotary Club Park collaboration on village properties. So I'll invite Mr. Cloutier and Dr. Tunick to say a few words if you'd like, and go from there.
Okay, good evening. Again, Brian Cloutier, this time different hat. President of Rotary Club of Oxford. I also have with me Dr. Joe Tunick. He is their past president of the Rotary Club, and Adam Bradford, who is our president-elect. So we are very pleased to be in a position to come to you this evening to not change our plans in how we want to develop the property into a park, but rather expand our plans to have the ability to develop the entire, I think it's nearly 3-acre parcel that the village currently owns into a park/passive park. There are many things that are becoming possibilities that we certainly don't want to narrow ourselves out of the ability to be able to develop the remaining part of the land. In addition to that, we look at, I sat on the planning commission for years, and I'm probably going to use the wrong terminology here, but the easement for the right-of-way of the street that comes off of Dayton as well. We're looking at the entire parcel so that if we would have the ability to work with other agencies to develop the land further, we would like to have the opportunity to do that. Aside from that, we've been approached with the opportunity to acquire a gazebo. There wouldn't be any cost to us other than the cost to move and to pour a slab. It's a rather large gazebo, and it's in very good condition. And in order for us to do that, initially we had talked about the possibility of putting some type of a passive sitting feature on the triangular piece of property behind the parking lot that Merge occupies. However, I know you have an agreement with them, and I know that that agreement is kind of vague as to whether or not it allows for the ability to put a gazebo on that property, and there's been some discussion between management and me in that respect. We need some clarification there, because that would be really ideally where we and we think it would become more of an asset to this community being able to place it there. So we need clarification on that as well. All that said, we need to also look at working on the letter of intent or the agreement that we would have between the Village of Oxford and the Rotary Club and getting that squared away too. We've started raising funds. We have some funds for seed money, and definitely before we can go more wide scale, again, I know I sound like a broken record, but we need to have that agreement taken care of, and there's a lot of things that we need to have summed up between not just the Rotary Club and the Village of Oxford, but within the Village of Oxford and its other outstanding agreements with other agencies as well. So not that I'm trying to push you, but I'm here pushing you to get moving on that, because we definitely would like to move forward. And if we move this gazebo, we're on a time crunch here, so we need to, as soon as we can pour concrete, we need to be thinking about that, and that's right around the corner. So that's where we're at. Questions?
I don't think so. There are some new council members, so if you can refresh the council's memory on the original play area that you intend for that, and then what you perhaps envision for the additional parcels that weren't originally discussed.
Sure, there's a lot of things that are fleshing out, as it kind of comes to life as we talk about it. With that being said, originally, for those of you that aren't familiar with the project, originally our plan was to take the small piece of property that is behind the parking lot adjacent to Merge and along the Pollyant Trail, and redevelop that property with better landscaping, because there's some dead trees there now. Redevelop that property with better landscaping, so to beautify the area in the neighborhood. But in addition to that, have some type of seating, whether it be benches or whether it be, in this case, a gazebo, which is a phenomenal, I think, asset to that area. But in addition to that, across the trail, the Pollyant Trail, more behind the Merge building, I'm calling it, although it's had many names over the years, behind the current Merge facility, there's a butterfly garden. We don't want to disturb that. Our goal is to keep that intact, but rather, beyond that, clear out along the trail, at least the initial part of this project is to clear that area out and put in a playscape that would be ADA compliant for children with disabilities. In addition to that, we look at the property on a large scale is, correct me if I'm wrong, Maureen, but it's about 3 acres, correct?
It might be even bigger than that, but yes.
Okay, it's close to about 3 acres, give or take. On a larger scale, as we've been working with individuals in the community to try to think outside the box of what we could do with that property, because it's really, it would be difficult to develop that property, and I'm not really sure, I might be speaking out of turn here, but I'm not really sure people in the community really want it to be developed. They want it to be a gem in the community and something that would in turn increase their property values, I'm sure. And so the Rotary, I feel, would be a good partner to be able to, as we look at grant opportunities, there are lots of things that could change that would allow us to develop that property into more of a passive park. Maybe some nature trails, maybe identifying some of the natural habitat there. Something similar to what you have along Scripter Park area in the pathways there on that side of town. So there's lots of things that we could do. Nothing is etched in stone because we haven't met with our architects yet. Obviously, we're not going to spend the money to meet with the architects until we have a commitment. And so that's why we're here this evening. First and foremost, to let you know that we have this gazebo that has been brought before us, and we don't want to necessarily forego this opportunity to something else later down the road that would be the same thing when we can save some money in this process. But clearly, you have some issues that you need to resolve on, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm just saying clearly you have some issues with some agreements that you have that need to be resolved before we can move forward with that project. Keeping in mind that early spring is when we need to move on that project. Sure. Because the gazebo where it is right now needs to be relocated, and sooner than later.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Thomas?
Of course, everyone knows I live right across the street. I love this idea. If you look at these maps that they've sent, you can see the natural trails that the neighbor kids have already put through there. I mean, there's a direct line from my driveway to Art and Dick's Party Store and Little Caesars. How often have you guys walked it? Everybody walks those trails. And I'd love to see this property cleaned up but left alone. And
I believe that's part of what Rotary's intention is to do with the rest of the land, is to clean it up, make it safer, more conducive to family environment, to educational environment, but to clean it up and increase property values in the community and make it something that is of use instead of something that is just an empty lot that kids can loiter on. Not that they are, but, you know, we want to clean it up. And until we develop that land, obviously, we'll need to go in and clean it up at the very least.
So,
Thank you. Ms. Logan?
Brian, what I hear you saying is basically you need us to make sure we do a rundown and anybody who's given permission to access this property up until now, either through an agreement or I don't know if there's been any kind of contractual agreements actually in place or if it's just been kind of,
Well, I think where the gazebo, we're suggesting the gazebo, we'd have to look at the PUD agreement over there, and that we could do that.
Because that's not on, well, it's village property, but it's tied up in that PUD agreement.
Right, and the rest,
The rest of it, I don't think is under
wide
any
open.
type of.
It's wide open.
It's
There's-
not encumbered at all.
I just,
It's
do you
just
know?
that the PUD for merge and the
Yeah.
parking lot.
Yeah.
But that's across the trail, that would be over here, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right here.
Everything that's
Where the
outlined
merged
is all
parking
village,
lot is.
those 3 parcels are village property, and all those are unencumbered, we could do whatever with.
And-
Those aren't in question.
Mr. Medor, please remind the council that those all have gone before the voters at one point or another, and we do have approval to sell those, correct?
Right, even though there wasn't any ever a plan or intention to do so, they had,
Gazebo.
because years ago, 2 of them got that way, we put the other one there last November, just so they're all in the same status. But there really wasn't anybody coming to us looking to buy them.
Okay.
That I'm aware of.
Yeah, over here.
And if you look at the memo I put out for those who weren't here at that time, I copied right out of the minutes when this was done at June 26th meeting, how the conversation went and where we were, and the recommendation down at the bottom that I think might satisfy us to go forward, at least on the memo of understanding or something like that, to get moving and solidify it, working in conjunction with them.
Right.
The part on the PUD, that is where the merge and then the parking lot is done, there's that little triangular piece behind the parking lot to the west of it. It does have some restrictions in the PUD that it calls for no activities in the area and no structures. Now, could we go back and maybe amend the PUD? We could try. That would be a perfect spot. When we walked it last summer, Sue and Joe and Brian and I walked it, it makes perfect sense to have tables or a pavilion, and we didn't know this gazebo was going to come available. Something like that would work perfect there.
Absolutely, and when Dr. Tunek and I walked the property early on, I think his vision was to develop that land into, because really he's the one who spearheaded this whole project. I just happen to be carrying the torch as the current president, and Adam will carry the torch as the next president. With that being said, we'll probably go in another circle again, but with that being said, you know, it's just, it only makes sense to us, and I think it is a win-win for this community to be able to do this. And I say, you know, knowing how slow government can work, and I say this knowing that I work in government, I'm just saying that we need to have a bit of urgency on this, and we do need to get this put to bed sooner than later.
Brian, so
Thank you.
would you be satisfied at our next meeting with a proposed memorandum of understanding outlining and whereas clauses, your intent, our intent, everybody's intent, and then a memorandum of understanding of the general terms for this type of project, and then you could work with us to try to fill in what it might include, not locking it in, but that it'll be for, you know, public, and it'll be passive things like that, and we could get that in place. Would that satisfy your fundraising?
Absolutely, but the other piece to that, and I know you are aware of this, is that we need to get this other verbiage cleaned up so that we can look at the spot for this gazebo.
That's a separate issue.
And that's even.
And that one's more timely.
Yeah, we need to do that faster, I understand that.
Right.
Do you know who owns that?
The Maple Street extension,
The
that's
extension?
village easement, I would assume.
The Maple Street extension is Maple Street. It's actually a platted street. And then the piece to the left and the right is owned by the village.
But it could be vacated, right?
It's a platted street that's never been improved, just like.
Right, so it's
Willow.
probably not in our mileage already, so we aren't getting Act 51 money for it, so.
I think it's so small, we're not getting anything for it.
So
We're not getting
it could be
$40 for it.
vacated
It'd
in
absolutely
favor
be
of.
We
vacated.
mow it, right?
But that could be part of the
Or the
agreement,
neighbors do.
correct?
It's just grassed
Well,
over
it's
right
important.
now, so
That's the only flat and level spot in the area, other than right up next to the trail.
it's a great idea.
And not that we plan on doing anything with that piece necessarily, that additional piece, but we obviously want to have it, we want to have all of the options on the table to be able to make this the most successful project we can. And as we look at grant opportunities, obviously, the more opportunities we have, the stronger our case becomes, so.
Great.
All right, is it, and from any of our members, everything sound good to you?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I move to direct the manager, Attorney Davis, Rotary representatives, to work out a draft MOU between the Village of Oxford and the Oxford Rotary Club.
Support.
There's a motion with support. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Moving on to our Passport Recreation Grant opportunity for beach retaining wall. Mr. Medor?
When I first came last week, or last year, Don Brantley had mentioned about the retaining wall, and there was some repairs needed to it, and they had, I believe, gotten a few preliminary estimates in the $18,000 to $20,000 range. And rather than just going forth and expending those funds, I thought, why not try to, apply for the Passport Recreation Grant? One of the things, I went to the DNR workshop they had about 3 weeks ago, and Linda Moran from the trail was there as well. I sat at the table with her. One of the things they're emphasizing with those recreation grants is rehabilitation, whether it's outside structures or buildings. And so this might even line up well with the current focus with their Passport Recreation Grant. That grant has a 25% max or minimum grant or a match. So Don got one of the estimates that has been updated. There's two different ways they can do it, and one was like 18,000, one was like 25,000. He's got a couple more in the pipeline. So even at the worst case scenario, if we're at 25,000, would be to replace the wall. We put in for a grant. We would be looking at about $6,500 maybe. What would be our cost? If you go above 25% match, you get a little bit better points. So you go 26, 27, 30%. Yes.
Didn't we budget for this in the,
I don't think so. We put like $1,000 in there in for the beach. Casey had to repair a few timbers on the very end, I think. Is all
we
put in.
discussed it though?
Yeah.
Because I would just as soon give them a decent percentage for us to,
Right.
Your
minimum's 25.
40 or
Anything above
50.
that, you score more points.
Right.
Right.
Because
So we did 30%. Why not let them pay 70 and 30? That's still a good deal.
Right. I mean, but I'd like to chip in as much as we could to guarantee, I love this grant. And
Yeah.
thank you for bringing it to our attention.
It's kind of timely. They're due April 1st, and we are required to have one public hearing. So we would have to have the public hearing at next month's meeting. Basically, just to allow, that way you're not doing it in darkness. People know what you're doing, that you're planning, you're committing certain funds to the project if in fact you are granted the grant. And this wouldn't even come into the play of the budget we're going to approve in this May. It would be the following year's budget,
Okay.
2020. So if you get the grant at the end of this year, then you know what the budget for the following year.
Great. Anything else from council?
I'll make a motion to schedule a public hearing for March 12th for the Michigan Recreation Passport Grant application.
Support. There's a motion with support to schedule a public meeting for the Passport Recreation Grant. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Moving on to request for permission to treat Round Lake weeds for 2019. Mr. Medor?
Basically, because we're the largest property owner around where Scripter Park is at Round Lake, in order even for them to treat it, they need our permission. I don't recall this coming last year. They asked us for money. We
Right.
donated 1,000, but I don't remember. I think this might be something perhaps new to DEQ or not. I don't know. But when the gentleman reached out to me from Lake Pro, he said he needs that.
Yeah, that's really my one question is, who's requesting this?
Yeah.
And
The Holiday Lake is still coming Holiday Lake.
who is Lake Pro and okay, the Lake Sox, the neighborhood
Last
association?
year when we did this, I was a retired eye doctor. What's Mr. Walden? Yes. He reached out to me last year and said, hey, in the past, the village had pitched in for the weed treatment on Round Lake at the beach because the beach is there.
I see.
And we took it to the budget council and we put $1,000 in the budget and we contributed $1,000. I think the overall cost was like $3,000 for that lake. So we're,
Okay,
and so Lake Pro did do the weed treatment last year. And now, he said even before the treat it, whether we contribute or not, they need our permission to treat it. So
I
that's
see.
really all this is tonight, is to ask permission that they
Okay.
allow us to treat it.
okay. Sir?
Yes, my name's Larry Obrecht. I live on Lake's Edge, and I'm not here on this issue. but I do sit on the environmental committee for our association. And you're correct that what's changed is the DNR now requires every property owner adjacent to a lake has to give permission for anyone to be able to treat the lake. And that's the reason for the request.
I see. Thank you.
If you need any more light on that, it's an outgrowth of some problems they had
Okay.
in the last couple of years
Great.
with impacts to property owners who didn't want the treatment, but yet got the treatment.
Okay.
Can
you
I
have something?
be so bold
Miss-
to ask how exactly do they treat it?
Well, there were some incidents over near, not in this community, but way over on the Lake St. Clair area where grant money was used to provide for some of these treatments, and it got a little misapplied. And so now they're going, making sure they circle back and correct and get every property owner on board before they do anything. Which is what they should have
I
done.
think what she was asking is, what is the treatment?
Yeah, I don't.
Oh, what is the
Right.
treatment?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It was one they had been using in the past.
Plant
Agent
control.
Orange.
Well, no, I mean, it would be a legit concern if,
Yeah.
my children swim in that lake, and I would imagine, growing up in Oxford Lake, I remember it was a concern back in the day when they chose to use chemical versus raking out the seaweed. And so, yeah, I'm still a
Usually
little-
safe, they're pretty, they regulate the safety of these. I mean, this isn't a private entity. They screen them pretty good.
They're
Mr.
not
Bailey?
just dumping Roundup in there.
No.
Mr. Bailey?
I'll find out.
We'll find out as soon as it gets in
I'm not
that
signing
water.
off on it. If it's Roundup, it's not getting approved.
Mr. Bailey?
I want to get a clarification from the attorney. When you said misapplication, you weren't referring to diversion of funds, you referred to technical misapplication.
They applied in
They
some
did the
wrong areas
thing.
where they didn't have permission.
I see.
So now they're very concerned about making sure they get all the.
Oh, they did a good application, but in the wrong place?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Good.
So we have to,
Logan?
we have to make the authorization tonight? Or is this something that we can actually just,
He believed,
Inquire
he acted to me that it was very time sensitive because he has to start the process and it's a long process. They treated, I believe, right when they opened up in the spring. I don't even know if our buoys were in last year when they treated.
We would still have time, though. We need to act on it, but we can get you the information on what the treatment is.
I just want to make sure that by giving this to us to authorize, we're not actually bypassing any of the residents that this would directly impact. So,
I would assume if those folks on the, I guess, what is that, the east side of Round Lake, they're all going to have to sign off on it too.
Yeah, we're just a property owner.
yeah, maybe this gentleman can give us some clarification.
Every property owner.
If you could come to the
Sorry,
podium so that it can pick up on the video.
Thank you, sorry to call
Thank you.
You're welcome. Each property owner has to give permission now. That's the new DNR mandate. And the purpose in making this request is so that we can do an application to the DNR for a permit to treat that lake. And we treat Oxford Lake as well as Ploss Lake. So we're involved in 3 different lakes. So the answer to your question is, the DNR is not going to give us a permit that they're going to allow something to go in a lake that would be harmful to your children or my children or anyone.
Yeah, they screen them pretty well.
all children.
What if 2 out of 10 houses on the other side don't want it? Do they just not treat in front of them? Is
Right.
that-
Then you
that's
have,
the only
well, then
difference?
we have to appeal that.
Okay.
It
Does that stop the whole thing?
Becomes a real problem.
If it's not unanimous, then you can't treat?
Yes, it becomes an issue.
It's an issue, for sure.
Have you sought approval yet from all the residents?
Yes, we have.
So, and everybody
And our-
consented?
The association, our association, who controls the lake bottom, all right, is able to do that, but we're not able to do that on this lake. We don't control the bottom. Yeah, as a matter of fact, you control some of it. And so that becomes a different problem. So we're pretty well set. And then, behind Ploss Lake and going off of Drainer all the way up to the school, that property is owned by a developer. Trident is their name. And so we also had to ask them for permission to be able to treat Plouse Lake, which we've treated for many years. So this is all new. This is the first year that this process is in force.
Quite a bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Mr. Bailey?
Can whoever is technically knowledgeable about this give us some idea about how effective it is, a chemical treatment versus going in with cutters and rakes and doing it mechanically?
Yeah, well, there's a couple issues. One is a cost issue, and harvesting becomes very expensive because then you have to take the material that you take out of the lake and you have to put it in a special, you got to haul it and you got to put it in a special landfill as opposed to being able to just chemically treat. And these lakes are not in such bad shape that there's a lot of chemicals going into the lake at all. I used to live on Indianwood Lake, and the cost of our treatments on just little Indianwood Lake, were $70,000 a year, all right? And these three lakes are nowhere near that. So.
Thank you.
But you're saying that both kinds of treatment do work?
They do. The problem that most people have with harvesting is if you have milfoil, for instance, or carry in one section of the lake, and you go in and drag that stuff all over the lake, which is what happens, you eventually spread it as opposed to maintaining it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I make a suggestion that any of these, sorry, thank you, any of these land, or bodies of water that have, we have dual authorization to, I would feel more comfortable making any kind of, motions moving forward on any treatment options, things like that. But after I hear what the majority of the association or residents have decided. So in the case of Oxford Lakes, you're saying you're on the council, and I know that Oxford Lakes has an association.
Yes.
So it would be on the association and then to come to us and say that this is how many people either had any kind of concerns, or I just want to make sure that we're not forcing any resident's hand if they feel that their safety is going to be jeopardized by anything that we authorize.
Oh, no, he would not be doing that. This has already gone to one of our general meetings. And so this is approved and now has been approved by our board.
So that's
yes.
what I'm saying is that in this new process, since
Right.
this seems to be recent in the way that it's
This
being
year.
done, right? By the time it comes to us, I just want to make sure that council members are knowledgeable on residents and how they feel about moving forward with it.
And I understand correctly that residents have already weighed in on this.
Right.
Correctly?
And we can send you,
On this lake?
if you'd like, we can send you the minutes, the resolution, the approval from our association meeting, if that would be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just moving forward, like I said, any bodies of water that would work in a process.
This is the only one.
This is it? Is this the only one then? that
Only
we-
be,
It's because we're a property owner
we're a
around that lake.
riparian owner on this
Okay.
one. We're not a riparian
I wasn't sure if there was any others, but, okay, so in
For
this
us,
case, we're good.
Not for you.
All right, thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Thank you. What's council's pleasure on this?
Well, I have a
Mr. Bailey?
comment, I guess. Is my understanding that the association has a lot of influence on the residents, but that if there was one holdout resident who said, I'm not going by what the association says, I'm saying no, then that's still an issue, correct?
It's an issue.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to grant permission to Lake Pro Inc. to treat Round Lake for weeds in 2019.
Support.
There's a motion with support to give permission to treat Round Lake for weeds. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Moving on to stop sign proposal, Chief Sowald.
Hello again.
Hello.
Here to ask on behalf of some residents that have requested an additional stop sign, which is needed at the intersection of Pontiac Street and Moyer Street, which is over here on the west side of town on Pontiac Street near Oxford Elementary School. Currently, Pontiac Street has only one stop sign at Park Street between Drainer and West Burdick. Pontiac is considered one of the village's main roads and can produce heavy traffic at times. This department has witnessed children attempting to cross Pontiac Street from the west side of the road to the east side of the road without the assistance of a sign. Although there is a stop sign at the next intersection of Pontiac and Park Street, children as well as adults tend to cross where it's convenient and closest to the school, which would be at Moyer and Pontiac Street. The addition of the stop sign will give a closer and safer option for kids and residents to cross, which is the closest intersection to the Oxford Elementary School. DPW Director Don Brantley stated that the signs, materials, as well as labor to install 2 stop signs from north and south for north and south traffic would cost $280. Tonight, I'm asking for approval to add a stop sign for north and southbound traffic at Moyer and Pontiac Streets for the safety of the kids and crossing.
Thank you. And Chief, do you know, will that include, if it's not already there, painting of crosswalks?
The painting and the crosswalks was not brought up. That was just for the sign cost.
Okay. Do we know if there's crosswalks currently at that intersection?
I think there is.
They're faded?
There are, they're not very visible,
They weren't retained this year.
Okay.
especially this time of year.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey?
To clarify, the impact of doing this on the Park Street intersection is nothing, right? You're not, Park Street will not change.
Well, when you're coming into the village from the north side of town, or even on the south side of town, if you're coming in from the north side of town, if you're traveling northbound on Pontiac Street, when you get to Moyer Street, that's where the stop sign is, and that's closest to the school.
Right.
So there's currently no stop sign there right now, until you get down to Park Street, which is the first stop sign. So really on Pontiac Street, there's only one stop sign, and that's at Park Street.
I'm just saying this has nothing to do with Park Street.
It won't change Park
It
Street.
won't change much.
Oh, I see what you're saying. No, the stop sign will remain where it is.
Okay.
Correct, yes.
Mrs. Helmuth?
That just cracks
I
me
know.
up
I'm
when you call
going
them
to keep doing
dads.
it.
Do you feel comfortable with 2 stop signs? Boom, boom?
I do. I think in a residential area, one stop sign on Pontiac Street being a main road, I think would warrant another stop sign, especially being close to the school. For kids to cross at a closer distance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Bailey?
I agree with the chief. I think if the speed limit there was 50, then 2 stop signs in a row would be kind of silly. But the speed is 25,
Probably
so
have
I see no problem. No problem with two in a row.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Thank you, Chief.
But next year, we're going to be putting a lot of traffic down this street during the construction, I would assume.
If we do that, then we can do things like bag the signs and make things quicker, if that's...
I mean, I don't have a problem with the stop sign there, don't get me wrong. I just don't want to screw up the whole flow of traffic.
No, there's a way we can control that for special circumstances. That wouldn't be a problem.
Great. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. I move to approve the requested additional stop sign at Pontiac and Moyer Streets.
Second.
There's a motion with support to approve stop signs at Pontiac and Moyer Street. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Moving on to 14 North Washington, microbrewery license, local government approval. Mr. Medor, could you give us some input on this?
Yes, Mr. Roble is here, and Mrs. Roble, I presume? Yes. Okay. They are going to be the new proprietors of the property and new business operating out of 14 North, the former Falling Down Brewery.
Okay.
And part of the process we have done with the same as we did with Mike One Drop down there at Oakdale, in order for them to go forth with the liquor control, they need government approval here. If we did deny them, they still could appeal it at Lansing to liquor control, but liquor control's first option is to get approval from the local municipality.
I see.
And Mr. Roble had provided me, now, I was checking today online, you have it says new on-site premises tasting room permit. And when I was looking online today, I thought that was only for wine. I thought the microbrewer was more what you were looking for.
If you could, Mr. Roble, if you could come to that podium, thank you.
I just want to make sure what we approve will get you what you need.
Right.
Yeah, it's for the brewery tasting room, but additionally, the winery will be added to that.
But, so they asked for the specific, the specific license that you're applying for. and you brought this to be filled out, it says a new on-premise tasting room permit, and I see that they have that in there.
Right.
So that is the one that you're applying for?
I believe so. Whiter typed it up for us, so.
Okay.
Whatever
Well,
you
if you
put
messed
there.
up, you'll be back.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking microbrewer was what you were looking at.
Right, it is.
So,
But the microbrewery, the tasting room goes along with the microbrewery permit.
all right.
Okay.
I wondered if we should add that to this as well, like maybe this would be for 2 permits.
Mr. Davis, can you shed some light on that?
No, the labeling of these licensing applications never makes sense.
Okay.
You worked with somebody to get this one, it's probably the right one.
That's why we hired her.
Okay.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that.
When I looked online today, everything I saw.
Let's hope he's right, he or she.
When I was on liquor controls today, this afternoon, everything I saw, the new on-premise tasting room permit referred to wine, not brew, not beer.
Not there. I believe with the brewing permit, the tasting room comes with it.
Worst case scenario, you
come back.
and ask us for the other permit, and if you hit a snag, and we'll address it then.
Yep.
Yeah.
So just, let me just comment. So I think that also it might be because we're gonna also open a restaurant too, so we need the 106A.
Yes.
So that's why it might be a little bit confusing.
The labels are very poorly done in this area.
Yeah, yeah.
I searched for the 106A on their site today, and it didn't even come up. All they still show on there is the 106.
Right.
Okay, so if we have to come back, it'll be another month before we come back, is that correct?
Yes.
This is what the lawyer recommended, that we
Okay.
make sure that you.
I just wonder if it would be helpful if we added new on-premise tasting room permit and microbrewer. Where all we're doing is giving approval to apply.
Right, right.
Right.
So, yes,
I would rather take the safe route and
I
add
would
that in
too.
there, because that's what we approved for the other persons that are doing similar to what you were doing, was a microbrewer.
Right.
Can we just write it on there?
Similar to
Yeah.
what they were doing, but it's also the restaurant, so I just want to make sure that it's an addition.
We'll just put it on there, we'll, act on it, and then if your lawyer yells at you, have him call me.
Well,
Do that.
we can fill out the form however it needs, but I just want to make sure that we approve it, what they need, and so you don't have to come back.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
If you don't need it, cross it out.
Okay.
Or if you don't need it,
Thank
don't apply
you.
for it.
Were there council comments, Mr. Bailey?
Yeah, I'm not a big beer drinker or wine drinker, and so some of the technical terms here mean nothing to me. So maybe somebody could, tell us a little bit about what's a microbrewery, what's a tasting room, or direct us to where we can go to the library and inform ourselves about these.
The microbrewery itself, we're actually a manufacturing facility. We're not a brew pub per se. We're allowed to produce more beer than an actual brew pub. We could self-distribute, and so the tasting room is allowed for people to come in and sample our products. And that's what the manufacturing permit would allow us to do.
Okay, and if I want to know the technicalities of that, I should just read somewhere, I don't know, is it the state law or something that tells you what is a tasting room and all that kind of
The government-
basic stuff?
Yeah, the liquor and license regulation website of Michigan clearly defines, everything
And
that's.
Mr. Medora can send us those links.
Yeah, there's a website for it.
We can check those out.
Thank you.
Mrs. Helmuth?
Joe, is this allowed in that zoning district?
Yeah, it's basically what they're doing already.
Oh, it's already approved.
I
We're
just want to make sure.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else? What's the council's pleasure on this?
I'll make a motion to approve the application for a small winery and restaurant, a microbrewery, and any other thing they want to do in there. That's legal. That's legal.
I'll support your motion.
There's a motion with support to approve the microbrewer license, local government approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it, the motion's carried. Moving on to Resolution 1904, the State Historic Tax Credit Resolution Support. I asked for this to be on this evening's meeting Recently in the state legislature, there have been two bills introduced, Senate Bill 54 and Senate Bill 4100. And these have been introduced with bipartisan support, introduced by Senator Wayne Schmidt in the Senate and Representative Ben Frederick in the House. These bills are identical, and what they do is they provide an incentive for our historic properties. And I think we should support those and demonstrate that support to the legislature as these things move through. As many of us know, our downtown area has recently been listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And in these bills, this provides a state historic tax credit for eligible properties within National Register and locally registered historic districts. We don't have any locally registered historic districts, but we do have a downtown that's on the National Register. So in terms of an economic development tool, this allows folks who are developing those properties to work through the State Historic Preservation Office. And if this goes through, they could qualify for up to 25% on their state income tax to rehabilitate those properties according to the preservation standards. So my recommendation is that we move to approve this resolution of support and send it on to our legislatures to kind of nudge them along. I think that this will be a huge thing for not only our community to provide another layer of tools, economic development tools, but also for our state. Oakland County and the state as a whole has a wealth of historic resources. And when an earlier iteration of this was all done away with in 2011, an earlier iteration of this leveraged, and I don't have the number in front of me, but leveraged millions of dollars in reinvestment. In fact, here in Oakland County, it leveraged over $5.6 million of investment with 10 historic properties in Oakland County. So I think it's something we should support. Any discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve a resolution of support for Senate Bill 54 and House Bill 4100.
Support? There's a motion with support to approve Resolution 1904 in support of Senate Bill 54 and House Bill 4100. Any discussion? All those in favor?
We have roll call.
Oh, excuse me. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Yes.
Kemp? Yes. Bailey?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes, sorry.
Sorry.
Yes. This time I think maybe you should call my name. Sure.
Thank you. I was getting instruction.
You were learning.
I was learning.
Resolution passed, so you have it somewhere where it doesn't, where I can click the
You have you've identified where you want it to go, right?
Correct. Yes. So moving on to item 11. Nothing has been removed from consent agenda item A, or excuse me, item 8. There's another opportunity for public comment. Mr. Cloutier?
Just quickly, I want to remind everybody too that the 501c3 for the Rotary Foundation is solid. It's been in place now for a little while. So when time comes to donate to the cause, we'll gladly accept any contributions that anybody would like to send our way. And we have a 501c3 tax deductible organization or foundation in place to give you that opportunity. The other comment I want to make is Mr. Bailey is the librarian in the room. If you want to come on down to the library, I'll help you research the difference between brewery and ice cream room anytime. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
If you need a tour of one, I'll go with you.
Yeah. Come to my refrigerator.
Jeff Winter, 448 Sunset Boulevard. I still live there. I just had one more question on that snow ordinance.
Sure.
Does it pertain to your driveway also, or just
No,
the sidewalk?
just the
No.
sidewalk.
Oh, okay.
Not your driveway.
Sorry for all the questions, but
That's okay.
I get asked a lot by residents, and most of them don't know what they're talking about, so I like
Okay.
to have the-
Well, and the public hearing is at our next meeting on March 12th.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Sir? There you go.
And if I could, just to follow up on that.
You can, the yellow is where the changes were made.
Our new website is up now for about a week. And right on the
Yes.
front page, there is a little pop-up that we can make changes to here and there. And then the new snow ordinance is right on the front page. You click on it and go right to it. The one that's currently in place and will be in place until this one is. So if anyone wants to know what's currently in place for this weekend or next week or the week after, that is right on our homepage. You click on the bottom, you go right to it, and you'll see the text.
Okay. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to manager and staff reports. Mr. Medor?
Well, one thing I was going to say was the website was up. I appreciate some help from our residents and/or council members to point out the little glitches that are out there perhaps still. There might be one or two out there. The Water Resource Commission had a meeting on the new lead and copper rules coming. It was scheduled for a couple weeks ago, and the weather waylaid it. I think it's next Thursday, I think it's rescheduled for, and Don and I are both going to attend that. We planned it before, but it got passed over the weather. And again, I did get one new special event application in just yesterday to Firmly Rooted Church. It's an event, I think like the Easter event they're doing in Centennial Park. And so that'll be coming to the council once it gets out and gets the approval from chiefs and Don and stuff like that. And those that are just contained in the park are quick overviews and really nothing to those. Those aren't involved much, so. Other than that, that's about all I have.
Okay, thank you. Terry?
Just that we had a problem with the distribution list for the packets and agendas, well, mostly the packets because of the size. They would not be accepted by the people we were emailing to, so I'm hoping that we're going to be able to explore a link on our website where it would notice people who are on that distribution list, and they can open the link and get their information.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Bob?
All set, thank you.
Okay. All right, moving on to council comments. We'll start at the end. Ms. Logan?
Just appreciate the new website, even with its glitches. I know it's a work in progress, but I think it looks fantastic, and I appreciate all the hard work you guys have done to get that up and going, and just everyone be very safe in the upcoming winter weather.
Mo?
Joe, the planning commission amendment for outdoor storage wasn't on the agenda?
Is that a question?
Surprise! No, it was just a statement.
Oh,
I'd like
okay.
it on the next agenda.
Okay. See, I took a couple of days off last week and I'm still catching up, I guess.
Yeah. There's 2 ZBA appointments that have to be done, correct? We have a vacancy and a vacancy in the alternates. So if anyone knows anybody who wants to serve on the zoning board of appeals, we need volunteers.
Unlike planning commission, they get paid.
Yeah, the big bucks, 0. The information we got tonight on the marijuana ordinance, is that going to be on our agenda, or is that going back to the planning commission now?
It's coming back to you.
Yep.
Next
You're
meeting.
going to have to give them direction.
You being counsel to the planning commission, because I'm on both.
It's coming back to council next meeting.
Council, okay. And then the cable commission are in their new buildings. They haven't completely moved it, still having fiber optics installed at the new building on Seymour Lake Road at Seymour Lake Park. But they're planning an open house in April, and they're being come and see the new digs.
Wonderful.
Are they going to hold all the meetings there once they're in there?
They are hoping to. Our next meeting is scheduled for there in April.
I know they're here yesterday, so.
The February meeting was going to be in 2 weeks, and we just met yesterday because of the weather. So we postponed the February meeting. We're going to meet April 29th, will be the next meeting at the new park, at the new building. And we're still working on, I asked Bob tonight, the lease for the property. He hasn't seen it. Do you have it, Joe?
For what property?
From the cable commission with the township for the new property.
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
See if you
I
can
will
get it,
you a
see if you can
copy
get
of
it,
that.
see if you can get it to us.
Because Bob has not seen it, and the township was ready to approve it.
Ms. Kemp?
I'd like to thank the council and staff for the warm welcome, and I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey?
I wish all our meetings could be done this efficiently. We're under 90 minutes, and it's not like we got nothing accomplished.
That's right. Is that all? Thank you. All right, on to me. I will say that we do have a closed session real quick at the end of this meeting.
Won't take long.
It won't take long. A couple things. First off, I'd like to welcome Allison Kemp, our newest member. Thank you, and welcome aboard. And I know I speak for a majority of the council when I say that if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to our staff as well as you learn your role here. So there is a lot to take in. Don't be afraid of it. It will all work out. It'll all come. So, yep.
Oh, I have a comment.
Mr. Bailey, sure. These are my comments.
Very
now.
impressed, looking over here. She takes notes. I very rarely take notes. Well, different council members have different styles.
Different styles. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bailey. I do want to thank Don and the DPW, his crew, and Chief Sowald and his crew. A few evenings ago, we got a report of a massive pothole on West Burdick Street that was after hours. The team kind of got that situation rectified very quickly. So thank you to your crew, your officer, and to Don and Rudy who came out and set up cones, and it was patched, the next morning. So great work, everybody there. Spring is coming. I know we're still talking snow ordinance and all that, but every minute is a minute closer to spring. So enjoy the winter weather while it's here, but please be safe. So with that, we will move on to our closed session. So I will entertain a motion to enter into closed session.
I make a motion to adjourn and...
Enter into closed session.
Oh, go into closed session, I'm sorry.
At 7:57 PM.
There's a motion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hold on. The meeting's not been adjourned. Please.
Requires a roll call vote.
Please.
We need a roll call vote.
Please. There's a motion on the floor with support to enter into closed session. Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Can I ask who supported that?
Who was the support? It was Logan for the motion.
I supported it.
And Helmuth for the support.
Okay.
Kemp?
Yes.
Logan?
Yes.
Helmut?
Yep.
Frost?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
All right, at this time, we are now in closed session. Thank you all.
There we go. Pleasure meeting.
All right, we are back in open session, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 8:26.
There's a motion, support. There's a motion with support to adjourn at 8:26. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. This meeting is now adjourned.